I wasn't supposed to be home. That's the part that keeps looping in my head like some cursed audio file I can't delete. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to hear it. But I was. And I did. It started with a vent. We'd had issues with the AC all week. Hot air blowing when it should have been cold. The thermostat blinking like it was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I figured I'd fix it myself, save the $200. So I crawled under the house. Flashlight in my mouth. Dust in my throat. Elbows scraping across old insulation. And then, I heard a voice. Not mine. Not hers. Not even from the room above me. No, it came through the vent. Clear as day. A low, smug chuckle, followed by a sentence that still makes my skin itch. He still thinks you're going to therapy? Silence. Then her laugh. Her laugh. He's too soft to question me. I could tell him I joined a cult, and he'd probably pack me a lunch for it. I blinked. Thought I was hallucinating. Maybe I was hearing neighbors. Maybe the heat was messing with my brain. Then the other voice said, "When's the next session, babe?" And her voice changed. "Friday. He works late. Like always." My heart didn't sink. It plummeted. Straight through the dirt and out the other side of the earth. I backed out from under the house like it was swallowing me whole. My knees hit the ground. I was still holding the flashlight, but I don't remember turning it off. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking into the house. I just remember feeling like the air itself had betrayed me. When I got inside, the living room was empty. So was the kitchen. Her keys were on the counter, meaning she hadn't left yet. But I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't demand answers. No, I did something worse. I waited. I waited until she left for her therapy. I waited until she pulled out of the driveway in her fake clean car, wearing the same over-perfumed scarf she always wore when she wanted to smell like someone else. Then I called her father. He answered after 3 rings. And all I said was, "You need to come over. Right now. And don't knock." He showed up in 15 minutes. We didn't speak. I let him in, handed him a pair of earbuds, and played the vent recording I'd made while I was still under the house. Hands shaking, voice cracking, but determined. When it ended, he didn't speak either. He just stood there, breathing. And then he screamed. Gerald didn't scream like a man who'd just been lied to. He screamed like a man whose daughter had just died. There was something raw in it, something I'd never heard from him, and I've known the man for over a decade. This wasn't anger. This wasn't even rage. It was grief. Loud, brutal grief. The kind that sounds like it's been hiding inside someone's chest for years, waiting for the exact right moment to explode. And now it had. I stood there in the kitchen, not knowing what to do. His scream echoed through the house, bouncing off the photos on the walls, wedding pictures, family vacations, her graduation day, all now haunting artifacts of a lie. I expected him to start flipping tables, breaking dishes, demanding justice. But he didn't. Instead, he went silent. Dead silent. He took one long breath, adjusted the belt on his windbreaker, walked to the foyer, and removed his shoes. Then he turned to me and said, "She's on her way home?" I nodded. My mouth was dry. I hadn't spoken in minutes. "She knows you know?" he asked. "No," I whispered. His face twitched, just once, and then he nodded to himself and sat down in the chair by the coat rack. The same chair she always used to pile her yoga mats on, pretending she went every Tuesday. We sat there like that for 12 minutes. I counted. My palms were sweating. My throat burned. My stomach was turning, not because of what I'd heard earlier, but because I had no idea what this man, this ex-military, no-nonsense, emotionally bankrupt father, was about to do. And then we heard the garage. The sound of tires on concrete. She was home. My heart started pounding. Every bone in my body was screaming, "Do something. Say something. Run." But I stayed. I stayed seated. I stayed silent. And I watched as her car door slammed shut. The front door opened slowly, like she somehow already knew the air inside had changed. She walked in, saw us sitting there, me and her father, side by side, and paused. "Frankie?" she asked, faking surprise, her eyes darting between us. Then she saw the phone on the table. My phone, still open to the voice recording app. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She just tilted her head and said, "You went through my things?" Before I could speak, Gerald stood. "Sit down, Melanie," he said. "I'm not a child, Dad." "Then stop acting like one." His voice was quiet now, controlled, which somehow made it even more terrifying. She didn't sit. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall. What is this? Some kind of intervention? Because if this is about therapy. He cut her off. Don't. Don't you dare insult my intelligence. There was something about the way he said it. No yelling. No curse words. That made her finally go still. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something I hadn't seen him carry in years. A small, red velvet box. He handed it to her. What's this? She asked. Open it. She did. Slowly. Inside was the gold heart-shaped locket he gave her when she turned 15. She used to wear it everywhere. Hadn't seen it in years. I want it back, he said. She blinked. What? You've lost the right to wear it. That's when she started to crumble. Not at me. Not at being caught. But at him. At her father. She begged. She tried to hug him. She started sobbing in a way I hadn't seen since her mother's funeral. And Gerald? He just took a step back and said the words I'll never forget. You didn't just betray him. You betrayed the man who raised you to be better than this. He turned and walked out the door, leaving her standing there with the box in her hands, mascara running, silence hanging. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Because that locket? It wasn't just sentimental. It was hiding something inside. Something she never thought would surface again. I thought Gerald leaving like that was the most dramatic thing I'd ever see in my life. I was wrong. What happened after he walked out was worse. Quieter, but worse. Melanie stood there in the middle of the living room, clutching that little velvet box like it was some kind of lifeline. Her face was streaked with tears, her breathing shallow, and for a brief second, she looked like the same girl I fell in love with years ago. But then she snapped her head toward me, eyes blazing, and asked, How much did you hear? Not what did you hear. Not I can explain. Just how much. That told me everything. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't shocked. She was calculating, trying to measure the size of the fire she had to put out. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the table just to steady myself. I told her the truth, that I had recorded everything from under the vent. The color drained from her face for just a split second before she composed herself again, pressing her lips together like she was bracing for impact. Then she snapped the locket open, probably just to stall for time, but the second she did, her body froze. Inside the locket, instead of the tiny family photo I remembered, there was a folded strip of paper, yellowed and creased from age. She tried to close it quickly, but I grabbed her wrist before she could. For once, I wasn't gentle. I yanked the locket out of her hand and unfolded the paper. My chest went tight. It wasn't just some scrap. It was a note. In her handwriting. A note that wasn't meant for me, or her father, or anyone who loved her. It read, No matter what happens, no one can ever know about the cabin. Burn this if discovered. I stared at it, not fully processing. What cabin? I asked. My voice cracked when I said it. Melanie's face twisted into something between panic and fury. She reached for the note, but I backed away. Frankie, don't, she said, her voice breaking. Please, don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. That sentence felt like a knife. My wife, the woman I defended to everyone, the woman I trusted beyond reason, had written something so cryptic, so dangerous, that even her father had no idea about it. And now she was standing there, begging me not to peel the layers back. But I couldn't stop myself. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. I demanded to know what the note meant, what the cabin was, and why she would hide something like this in the locket her father gave her. She started pacing, wringing her hands, muttering to herself like she was trying to rehearse a lie but couldn't decide which one to use. Finally, she spun toward me and said, It's none of your business. Just drop it, Frankie. For once in your life, just let something go. That was it. That was the breaking point. After years of being the one who let things go, the one who stayed quiet, the one who gave her the benefit of the doubt, I couldn't anymore. I told her no. I told her I wasn't leaving this alone. And that's when she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not even a cruel one. A laugh that sounded relieved. You really don't get it, she whispered. If you open this door, Frankie, you won't just lose me. You'll lose everything. And before I could ask her what that meant, headlights swept across the window. A car pulled into the driveway. But it wasn't Gerald's. It was the man from the garage. And he wasn't alone. I wish I could say I stormed to the front door like a man possessed, ready to defend my home, my marriage, whatever scraps of dignity I had left. But the truth? I didn't move. I froze again, because I recognized the silhouette even before the headlights cut out. The same overconfident posture, the same too-tight t-shirt stretched over his gym-built arrogance. It was him, garage guy. Only this time, he wasn't here to sneak around. This time, he brought backup. A second figure emerged from the passenger side, slower, more deliberate. I couldn't see his face through the window glare, but something about the way he walked made my skin crawl. Not like a thug, not like a friend, like someone who didn't care what house he was walking into because he already owned every room. Melanie didn't flinch. She just stood in the center of the living room, arms crossed, breathing like she'd been waiting for this moment and dreading it in equal measure. When I turned to her, when I finally snapped out of my trance, I asked her the one question I thought would matter. Who the hell is he? She didn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because she didn't know how to tell me. The knock came. Not loud, not aggressive, just 3 dull thuds, spaced out, calculated. I reached for the door handle, and she actually whispered, "Don't." I turned to her slowly. "You invited him here." "No," she said too fast. "But he knows when things go wrong." Before I could even begin to unpack that sentence, the door opened. I hadn't unlocked it. He walked in like he'd done it before, like our house wasn't mine, like I was the guest. He wasn't huge or intimidating in the obvious sense, but there was something cold in his face. Expensive coat, leather gloves, calm eyes that scanned the room like he was filing everything away for later. And then he smiled at me. "Franklin, right?" he said, voice smooth, almost polite. I didn't answer. He looked at Melanie next. "You didn't tell him about me?" She didn't answer either. She looked down, almost ashamed. Almost. That's when garage guy, Troy, or Trent, or whatever steroid-fueled name he had, stepped in behind him, holding a black duffel bag. My brain, already scrambled, went straight to the worst-case scenario. My imagination painted weapons, money, maybe even something worse. But he just tossed it onto the couch and grinned at Melanie like he was proud of himself. "It's done," he said. "Clean." She nodded. Not to him, to the man in the gloves. That's when I lost it. Not yelling, not punching, just sheer, helpless confusion. What is going on? Melanie finally met my eyes, and I could see the guilt boiling underneath the surface. But it wasn't about cheating anymore. That was just the crack in the dam. This was the flood. She walked over to me slowly, carefully, like I was an injured animal she didn't want to startle. "I didn't mean for you to hear that recording," she said softly. "I was going to tell you. Eventually." "Tell me what?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. "That I'm in trouble," she said. "And now you are too." The man in gloves cut in before I could respond. "Let's get this over with," he said, opening the duffel bag. Inside wasn't cash. Inside wasn't drugs. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Some of Melanie. Some of strangers. Some of buildings I'd never seen. But in the middle of all of them, one picture stood out. Me, standing in the backyard, under the apple tree, tray in my hands, the day I caught her cheating. Someone had been watching us. Long before I knew anything was wrong. I staggered back, trying to catch my breath, but the man in gloves held up a hand. "You were never supposed to be part of this," he said. "But now that you are, you're going to have to make a choice." Melanie's voice cracked as she said it. "The cabin wasn't the beginning, Frankie. It was the cover-up." The moment those headlights poured across the living room walls, I felt like the floor beneath me had cracked open. I didn't move toward the door. I didn't shout. I didn't even breathe. I just stood there, staring at Melanie, watching her eyes twitch toward the driveway like a soldier waiting for the first bomb to drop. She didn't ask who it was. She knew. She didn't even look surprised. There was this stillness in her. Not peace, not fear, just cold, practiced calm. The car stopped, engine still rumbling. 2 doors opened, 2 closed. I only saw one silhouette through the frosted glass. Tall, broad shoulders. No hesitation in his stride as he approached the house. Whoever he was, this wasn't his first time crossing someone's threshold uninvited. And Melanie? She didn't run, didn't brace, didn't even step back. She just whispered, "Don't answer it." But by the time the words left her mouth, it was too late. 3 knocks. Heavy, slow, deliberate. She turned to me, eyes wide but dry. "Frankie, please," she said, her voice barely audible. "Don't open it. Not yet." But my body moved on its own. I wasn't thinking about right or wrong. I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was thinking about how many pieces of my life had shattered in the last 12 hours, and how many more were about to hit the ground. When I opened the door, the man standing there looked like someone from another world. Not the tattooed bro from the garage. No, this guy was different. Clean-shaven, black gloves, neatly pressed jacket, and eyes that didn't blink enough. Cold. Flat. Like he was reading me the way you'd read a spreadsheet. Checking for errors, finding none. He didn't ask to come in. He just stepped forward like he owned the air between us. Melanie didn't speak. Didn't scream. Didn't even curse. She sat down on the edge of the armrest like her legs had suddenly decided they'd had enough. The man placed a black duffel bag on our coffee table and looked at her. You told him? She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She just said, not all of it. His jaw tensed. Then I'll do it. I took a step back. My voice cracked from the dryness in my throat. Tell me what? He unzipped the bag, pulled out a stack of photos, and tossed them on the table like playing cards. I expected compromising pictures. Maybe something of her and that guy. Maybe her doing something criminal. But the one that landed on top stopped my heart. It was me, standing in our backyard. Same outfit. Same French toast tray in my hands. It was from the morning I caught them in the garage. The photo had been taken from the woods behind our fence. I grabbed it. Who took this? My voice was hollow. How? How long have you been watching us? Melanie stood now. It wasn't about you, Frankie. Then why am I in the picture? Because you're the only variable I didn't account for. I blinked. What the hell does that even mean? The man, I still didn't know his name, finally spoke again. The cabin, he said. You saw the note. But what you didn't see was what was taken from that cabin. And now, because of your curiosity, you've become a liability. I looked at Melanie. Taken? What was taken? She swallowed hard, her voice shaking. Frankie, when I said it was a cover-up, I meant it. I laughed, but not because it was funny. It was the only thing keeping me from throwing something through the window. You were cheating on me, Melanie. That's not a cover-up. That's betrayal. No, she snapped. You think the affair is the story. It's not. It was never about love. It was about leverage. The man in the garage? He wasn't just some fling. He's a cleaner. He gets rid of problems. The kind that live in log cabins and carry backup drives. The man in gloves sighed like he was tired of waiting. Do you want to live, Franklin? That question, it didn't feel hypothetical. I took a step back, my brain racing, pulse hammering in my neck. I'm not part of this, I whispered. You are now, he said. And what you do next decides whether we bury the truth quietly, or whether your face ends up on someone else's coffee table. He handed me a second photo. This one wasn't me. It wasn't Melanie. It was a man, older, beard, bruised eye, gagged and bound in what looked like a cabin basement. A date was scrawled in the bottom right corner. 2 weeks ago. I dropped the photo like it burned. And Melanie? She didn't flinch. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. After the man with the gloves left, after giving Melanie one last look that didn't need explaining, I stood at the kitchen sink for almost an hour, staring at nothing, gripping the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Melanie sat at the dining table the whole time, slouched forward with her hands covering her face, saying nothing, not even pretending to cry anymore. The silence between us was radioactive. Every time I looked at her, I saw the photograph again. That man in the basement, gagged, terrified, very much alive, 2 weeks ago. When I finally broke the silence, my voice came out rough. You're going to tell me everything. No more riddles. No more vague warnings. No more you don't want to know. I do want to know. I deserve to know. So start talking. She looked up, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of the woman I married. The one who used to doodle on takeout napkins and leave them in my laptop bag. But it vanished. What sat across from me now wasn't that woman. It was someone else entirely. She started slowly, like it physically hurt to say the words. The cabin belonged to a man named Desmond Raleigh. He wasn't just a client. He was a blackmail broker. Quiet, invisible, untouchable. He kept insurance on everyone he ever worked with. Hard drives, files, recordings, all stored in that cabin, off-grid. Cash payments only, no paper trail. He helped people disappear, helped others stay hidden, clean messes, until he became a liability. I could barely process her words. And you were working with him? I was working against him, she said. At least I thought I was. It's hard to explain. Desmond had something on me. On my father, too. Something buried, long before I met you. Something old, but dangerous. I agreed to help a third party steal back the files before he could leverage them. It was supposed to be simple. In and out. No one gets hurt. But someone did get hurt, I snapped. He was tied up in that picture. She nodded. We didn't expect him to be there. The night we broke in, he was supposed to be out of state. But he was paranoid, started sleeping in the cabin some nights. We panicked. The man you met earlier, the one with the gloves? He was there. He handled it. And by handled, I mean he put Desmond in the basement, locked the hatch, and left him there until someone figured out what to do next. My blood ran cold. You left a man tied up in a hidden basement for 2 weeks? She looked down. It wasn't supposed to be 2 weeks. It was supposed to be 48 hours. Just enough time to wipe the drives, erase the trail, and disappear. But the backup files were encrypted. We needed more time. Then you started asking questions. Then the recording happened. Everything spiraled. I sat down, not because I wanted to, but because my knees couldn't hold me up anymore. So why me? Why the photo? Why am I suddenly involved in something I didn't even know existed? Melanie reached into her jacket and pulled out a second envelope. She slid it across the table like it was made of poison. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a printed photo, not recent, not even in color. It was a scanned image from what looked like a security camera feed from years ago. It showed a young man entering a building. I squinted at the grainy image. It was me. At least, it looked like me. But I had no memory of it. That's not me, I whispered. Melanie leaned forward, her voice low and heavy. Desmond had ways of faking things. Fabricating timelines. Manufacturing evidence. That's what he did when someone tried to turn on him. This photo? It shows you walking into the building where one of his blackmail victims died. It's doctored. But if it gets leaked, Frankie, people will believe it. Everything in me screamed that I should run. Call the cops. Call her father. Call someone. But I couldn't. I was frozen. Because now, somehow, I was the loose end. And Melanie? She didn't look like she was trying to protect me anymore. She looked like she was deciding whether to keep me alive. I didn't tell her I was leaving. I waited until Melanie finally drifted off, not in a bed, but hunched on the couch like a ruined statue, eyes puffy, clutching her knees. I stood in the hallway for almost 10 minutes just watching her breathe, wondering if anything she ever told me had been real. I wondered if the woman who once cried while watching animal rescue videos was the same woman who now calmly talked about locking a man in a basement. And worse, if she was still debating whether to lock me away next. I took her keys and her burner phone. She'd been stupid enough to leave both in the side pocket of her purse. I guess she didn't think this soft husband would grow a spine in the middle of the night. The GPS history led me to coordinates I almost didn't believe were real. They pointed north, deep into the Green Mountains, near the state line, in a patch of forest so rural I lost cell signal halfway there. I kept thinking this was madness, that I was sleepwalking through a dream I desperately wanted to wake up from. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I had to see it. I had to know. The cabin appeared after 2 hours of winding gravel roads and silent dread. It looked exactly like I imagined. Isolated, hunched under a canopy of trees, with a rusted metal chimney and moss crawling up one side like a parasite. I parked 100 feet away and approached on foot. Every branch that cracked under my shoes sounded like a gunshot. The front door wasn't locked. No cameras. No motion sensors. No lights. Just a thick, damp air of abandonment. I stepped inside and was hit with the stench of mold, dust, and something else, something metallic, like blood left too long in cold air. I covered my mouth and moved forward. The floorboards creaked under me, as if warning the house of my arrival. Most of the furniture had been stripped bare, drawers emptied, cushions missing, cabinet doors left open like someone had left in a hurry. But the trapdoor in the far corner of the living room? It was shut, bolted, fresh padlock, new scratches in the floor from where it had been used. My heart thundered as I crouched next to it. I fumbled through the duffel bag I brought, found a crowbar, and wedged it under the lip of the hatch. It took 3 tries and all my weight, but the lock snapped. The trapdoor groaned open, releasing a wave of cold, wet air that smelled like sweat, old wood, and something sour underneath. A narrow wooden ladder led down into darkness. I clicked on my flashlight. The descent felt endless. 10 rungs. 15. And then dirt. A basement dug into the ground, maybe illegally, maybe centuries ago, with stone walls and a single metal folding chair in the center. Chains. Rope. Stains I didn't want to identify. But what made my stomach flip was the cot in the corner. Thin mattress, blanket soaked through, food wrappers, an empty water jug, and next to it, an ankle shackle snapped clean in two. He was gone. Desmond Raleigh wasn't in the basement. But he had been. Recently. Very recently. There was blood, smeared along the floor in a pattern that didn't make sense, like someone had tried to write something with it, but gave up. I followed the trail to the far wall, and that's where I found it, a symbol carved into the rock. Not a letter, not a name, just a crude triangle with a line through the middle. It was burned in with something hot. Below it, taped to the wall with duct tape, was a Polaroid. Of me. Again. Only this time, I wasn't alone. Melanie was beside me. At a gas station. Smiling. Hand on my chest. It was from 2 years ago. I remember the shirt I was wearing because it was the day we drove back from her cousin's wedding in Maine. Someone had been following us long before I ever stepped into that garage. I backed out of the basement in a daze, locked the hatch behind me, and sat on the front steps of the cabin trying to breathe through the rising panic. That's when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel behind me. A single black SUV. Tinted windows. No plates. I ran for the woods without thinking. Branches clawed at my face. My lungs burned. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be found. Not here. Not now. Because Desmond was missing. The files were missing. And someone, maybe multiple someones, had been collecting evidence that would make me look like the architect of it all. And worst of all, they had pictures of me and Melanie, as a team. Not a victim. Not a husband. A partner. I don't know how long I stayed hidden in the forest. Long enough to feel the blood freeze inside me. Long enough for my thoughts to loop endlessly around one question. Why me? Not in the self-pitying way I used to ask it when Melanie forgot our anniversary, or when I worked overtime so she could find herself for the 4th year in a row. No, this time it was sharp, purposeful, calculated. Why had they pulled me in and kept me close? I circled back to the cabin before dawn. The SUV was gone. The air was still. That horrible symbol was still carved into the basement wall like it had been waiting for me to look again. But I didn't go back down. Instead, I went outside, sat behind the cabin under a collapsed lean-to, and let the first rays of morning hit my face. I dug my fingers into the wet dirt, not really looking for anything, just grounding myself. That's when I felt it. Not metal, not plastic, wood, hard and rectangular, buried no more than 2 inches beneath the surface. I cleared the dirt and pulled it free. It was an old cigar box. No lock, just age and rot. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a flash drive. I didn't wait. I drove straight to a gas station 5 miles away, bought a burner laptop, and sat in the back seat of my car with shaking hands as I loaded the contents. There were 5 video files, each one worse than the last, until the last one flipped the entire nightmare upside down. The first 4 showed meetings. Desmond Raleigh talking to various people, shady deals, blackmail trades, money, secrets, crimes. The kind of stuff that could collapse reputations and quietly rewrite headlines. Melanie appeared in 2 of them, in the background, silent, eyes hollow. But the 5th video? That one showed Desmond, seated at a desk. He looked exhausted, dirty, nervous. He leaned into the camera and said, "If you're watching this, I'm either gone or I've escaped." My final message is simple. I was threatened by the woman who calls herself Melanie Kerrigan. But her real name is, and the video glitched. Deliberately. A digital cut. Like someone had tried to erase the name, but didn't know how to do it cleanly. Still, it was enough. It wasn't her real name. Everything, the marriage, the house, even the locket, had been a cover. For years, I had been married to a fabricated person. Someone trained to manipulate, to control, to use the mask of love to keep her shadows out of reach. And somehow, I had survived it. I drove home in silence, the flash drive still clenched in my fist like a grenade I didn't intend to use. When I got there, Melanie was gone. No note, no trace, just her side of the closet empty, her favorite mug missing, and the front door left open, as if she wanted me to know she'd left it that way on purpose. There was only one thing she left behind. Her wedding ring. It sat on the apple tree stump in the backyard, right in the center, like a crown atop a grave. I stood over it, breathing in the cold morning air, and didn't touch it. Instead, I walked back inside and called Gerald. He didn't answer, but he called back an hour later. He didn't sound surprised when I told him she was gone. He only asked one question. Are you safe? I said yes. And this time, I meant it. A week later, I filed for annulment, not divorce. Because I had evidence her name wasn't even real. I turned over what I had to a quiet lawyer who asked no questions and charged me less than he should have. I shredded the photo prints, burned the hard copies, wiped the drive, and boxed everything tied to her into a storage unit I never planned to visit again. And then I did the thing I should have done years ago. I planted a new tree, right where the old one rotted out. This one wasn't symbolic. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a promise. It was a beginning. Mine. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the soft one, or the weak one, or the fool. I just felt free.